Walt Disney's The Little Mermaid live-action remake opens Friday in theaters on May 26th, and Deadline magazine has now released their weekend projections both domestically and internationally. And let me tell you something, the numbers are so bad on the international side that I am shocked. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Now, as we've covered this before, The Little Mermaid has a 73% rating with critics. That's all critics on RT. But as we continue to remind folks, if we click into the top critics, it stands currently at a 47%. That is a massive difference from the all critics. And this is why we say when you go to the top critics, you're going to eliminate a lot of the quote-unquote pixie dusters out there that are going to sing the praises or score a movie high for Disney no matter what, even if the reviews aren't terribly shining. But let's look at some of these latest reviews for The Little Mermaid, and that's going to explain a lot about what's going on at the box office projections right now. So again, if we go into top critics here, just recently, the New York Times has now jumped on the list, along with the San Francisco Chronicle and the Los Angeles Times, as giving this a splat rating on RT. From Wesley Morris, it reeks of obligation and noble intentions, joy, fun, mystery, risk, flavor, kink. They're missing. The movie's saying, quote, "We tried." Yeah, you tried not to offend, appall, challenge, or imagine. And another top critic review from Little White Lies, Halle Bailey's charms can't distract from all the bizarre choices at the heart of this underwhelming live-action remake. Now, in case you may not have noticed, both of those two recent negative reviews on the top critic score for RT are African-American writers and movie reviewers. That's certainly not what Disney had planned on. Since Jump Street, Disney has been pushing the race narrative on this movie, with them obviously swapping the traditionally pale-skinned, red-headed Ariel character for this new version played by Miss Bailey. But apparently that's fallen on deaf ears, even with critics that they would expect to support such a decision. Now, this morning, Box Office Pro gave a little bit rosier picture on the domestic side for The Little Mermaid over its 4-day Memorial Day weekend bow, thinking that it would come in at around $135 million or so over the 4 days. They may be a little bit on the high side, as sometimes Box Office Pro does tend to be. Now, part of the telltale signs of whether or not a franchise of this nature aimed at family or really mostly children audiences is going to be a big hit or not, what does the merchandising look like if there is a capable merchandising tie-in? Now, of course, this is The Little Mermaid. Of course, it's got a big merchandising tie-in. But as of last week, the Little Mermaid Ariel doll already marked down 20% in many places. And of course, this is not traditional Ariel. This is the new Halle Bailey version of Ariel. Now, with that bit of baseline information out of the way, let's talk about something, because we've looked at Little Mermaid's tracking on Box Office Pro for the last few weeks. So what makes today's story from Deadline any different? Well, we're going to show you, because it includes now their projections on the international box office, something that we haven't had up to this point. And with what is reportedly from Deadline going to look like around $120 million, not $140 like Box Office Pro says, but $120 million over the 4-day Memorial Day frame, with maybe around $100 million on the Friday through Sunday with Thursday previews. We now have international figures that are coming in. But in order to make them more comparable to something relevant, so we have an idea of how well or how poorly Deadline's headline is going to be, well, let's go back and look at some previous Deadline entries, namely from Beauty and the Beast in 2017 and Aladdin in 2019. From March 20th of 2017 by Nancy Tartaglione, somebody you hear us still quote to this very day on the international box office. Beauty and the Beast at $1 billion worldwide. That was a guess at that point because that was opening weekend. But the opening weekend for Beauty and the Beast, $357 million global haul. 182 million of that came from offshore, meaning outside of the US and Canada. In the US and Canada, it scored about $174 million. And at the time, Nancy had it pegged because that movie closed out with $1.27 almost billion worldwide. 500 of that came from the domestic box office and 760 some odd million from the international. And on the international side, the top territory was Japan, believe it or not, at 110 million, followed by the UK at just shy of 100 million, and China at 85.8 million. Now, regardless of what your opinions on the movie were, it looked like the original Beauty and the Beast. It felt and sounded a lot like the original Beauty and the Beast. Granted, Emma Watson's not the greatest Broadway vocalist and did require a significant amount of post-production help with auto-tune, but audiences really enjoyed it. Again, go back to what we said with Little Mermaid from Jump Street, and that was, we had some concerns because you don't want to give audiences visual cues that make them question, what am I looking at? Why did this change? They did something different. And is that going to be good? Is that going to be bad? I don't know. That's exactly the problem that they did with The Little Mermaid. Now, in the case of the next movie, Aladdin, they actually did do a casting with actors and actresses that fit the ethnicity of the characters in the movie. Nobody complained. Nobody complained that Middle Eastern actors were playing Aladdin and Jasmine. Now, some people question Will Smith playing the genie, but I didn't hear anybody questioning that because he was black. It was more of a question of Robin Williams was so iconic in the role, could Will Smith actually pull it off? Well, a lot of people really enjoyed it, and the movie itself, guess what, did about $1 billion. Let's take a look at that one. From Nancy Tartaglione again, 2 years later on May 28th, 2019. Of note, the same opening weekend that we're talking about right now, Memorial Day opening weekend, that The Little Mermaid is going into. Aladdin rides to a princely $212+ million global bow. Now, that was a far cry behind Beauty and the Beast. And again, I think it's because that was a Memorial Day weekend. There is more of a stretch over time with people going on a Monday, people going on Tuesdays, Wednesdays. A lot of kids are getting out of school at that point, and you've got the entire summer frame ahead of you. After audiences saw it and enjoyed it, it dragged the movie out to a $1.046 billion worldwide haul, $355 million coming in domestically, and $691 coming in internationally. Now, the international box office was only about 10% or so behind that of Beauty and the Beast. The domestic box office, however, was about $150 million behind Beauty and the Beast. Now, the other thing that's important to note is that Beauty and the Beast had a reported production budget of $160 million, and Aladdin with a reported production budget of around $180 million. The Little Mermaid, the remake coming out in just a couple of days, is coming in with a production budget of somewhere around or north of $200 million. So what then is Deadline estimating for the international box office? The Little Mermaid to be a part of that world with a $180 million global start. That sucks. Disney's return to live-action takes of their animated vault in the fullest theatrical form happens this weekend with Rob Marshall's The Little Mermaid, which is eyeing a $180 million worldwide start. The majority of that number will be made stateside with $120 million for the 4-day Memorial Day holiday and around $100 million over its 3 days. Let's not skip over the fact that what they are suggesting at this point, based on their internal data that they have collected, they're looking at $60 million internationally for this film. That is atrocious. That is about half of what Aladdin got 4 years ago and a third of what Beauty and the Beast pulled in on its opening weekend in March 6 years ago. We're talking about a major Walt Disney IP, the first time it's been made into live action, and it isn't even expected to break the $200 million global opening mark. And that's with a 4-day holiday Memorial Day weekend in there. And that's with ticket prices that have inflated some 30% since Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin. But hey, not to make things worse, let's go ahead and make things worse. Let's remind everybody what we covered just a few days ago here on Valiant Renegade. Fast X speeds to a $319 million global opening with the international box office. And Fast X didn't have the luxury of a holiday Monday to go to a 4-day weekend with that extra $20 million domestic that they're factoring in for The Little Mermaid on the Deadline article. So what that means is The Little Mermaid is going to open with 1/2 of the box office of Fast and the Furious. The international box office for The Little Mermaid is going to open with 1/4, less than 1/4 of the international box office of Fast X. And just to remind everybody, Super Mario Brothers opened up at $377 million globally. Now, that was a 5-day that included a Wednesday and Thursday preceding its opening 3-day weekend. But even if we were to throw one of those days out in favor of helping The Little Mermaid, discounting the fact that Little Mermaid will have Thursday previews thrown in there as well, quite frankly, it's still outperforming The Little Mermaid at a scale of nearly 2-to-1. This should have been a layup for the Walt Disney Company, but instead they have broken it. And a lot of that has to do not just with the movie itself, but with the bad will that Disney has sown into their audiences over the last several years, diving into socio-political issues and basically chastising audiences for not liking their content anymore. Now, could Little Mermaid surprise everybody and leg out beyond belief, hitting the 4X realm? That's about what it's going to need to try to break even at this point at the box office if these weekend numbers projections from Deadline actually hold. They may be slightly better. They could also be worse. But they're going to have to be substantially better than what we're seeing right now just a day before Thursday previews begin for this movie to have a good shot at making it. Right now, Universal Studios is continuously eating Disney's lunch, and I don't know if anything is going to change in the near future. And of course, join us on the Sunday Live show where we will be discussing just that. Until then, take care.